Solo and everywhere.
Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. And we have a doozy tonight, okay? Because everybody, a lot of people are talking about free speech, and we have a few stories we want to cover for you tonight. We're going to focus primarily on free speech, because if we can't say anything, then anything we do talk about, or anything we want to talk about, whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's culture, if they're not allowing us to say anything, or if everything we say is considered to be hate speech, then we're done. I mean, I hope people in America understand that America is not America without the right to speak freely, amongst our other rights. And that's why it's important for us to talk about that tonight. Thank you for joining us, all your Holy Faith Media crowd, fans of the front line with Joe and Joe, both on Facebook and YouTube. Wherever you find us, please do whatever you can with a click or two here or there to support us in any way. We'll put up our Patreon in case you're interested in dropping in a few bucks and subscribing to us and keeping us going financially, which you already have so far. Okay, we'll put that up there also, and yeah, we let everybody know that all the time that Joe and I have an afternoon show on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. That's a 3-hour show on Mondays. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it last week. I'm going to mention it again. Joe and I have been blessed that we now have an interview show, a radio show on Veritas Catholic Network that covers Connecticut, Northern Long Island, and Westchester County, with the intention of the owners of the station to eventually take over a station that will cover all of New York City. So we're on the ground floor there. We're doing our interviews, which are kick-butt interviews. Our first one aired last week with Bill Donahue. I'd say that was a barn burner, okay? Talking about the Equality Act and the dangers of the Equality Act. And today at 5 o'clock, you had Jesse Romero, where we were talking about the 5 stones against the culture war. And that one's available also on podcast. So you could download the Veritas Catholic Network app and you could listen to it anytime. But we do go live Sundays at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're very grateful to God for that, and we're blessed by that. So tonight, like I said, we're going to give you a few examples, and we're going to talk about just how far off the reservation these people are and why the absolute need to fight back. Because like I said, if we can't open our mouths, as Joe and I say on the show all the time, the greatest counter-revolutionary act you could commit right now is to open your mouth and speak the truth. If we cannot open our mouths and speak the truth and have an open and honest debate in this country, I think we're finished. Having said that, I'm handing it over to my brother.
As Joe said, we're going to talk a little bit about censorship. And when we discuss things, we always give examples. So you, I guess, judge for yourself when we give these examples if this is worthy of being censored or not. The first is Matt Taibbi. He was censored by the mainstream media. And this is the statement that got him censored. This is what he said. I live in a town that has a massive immigrant population and a decimated school system. Intellectually, I think bilingual education is a mistake. I know doctors here in New York who see an endless stream of 15 and 16-year-old girls flying in from places like the Dominican Republic, specifically to get on Medicare and have their babies here. I'm pretty sure it's okay to not be happy about that as a taxpayer. That's what got him censored. Now, let me just from an objective perspective. Obviously, this is what I think that the angle. I mean, he's saying something about someone who's Hispanic. That's my guess. You know what I'm saying? Women, young girls coming in from the Dominican Republic. You see, but I don't think that's where he was coming from. What I think he's basically making a statement about is, obviously, New York has immigrants from all over the world. Nothing wrong with that. He didn't say anything. It was pretty neutral.
Right.
But what he is saying is people are gaming the Medicare system. That's the point that he's making. He's also making a point about the school system cannot support this population that's coming in for a specific purpose to game the system.
Isn't that reasonable?
I don't think that's worthy of being. Now, you could disagree with him because I thought we lived in America. That's perfectly fine. But to blackball him from by that statement,
right?
I'm sorry. And this is not me speaking as a Democrat. This is not me speaking as a Republican. I'm stepping back and objectively speaking, I don't know how you could censor someone for that statement. You may not agree with it, but to censor him, sorry.
Well, that's the underlying problem. That's what we're going through now in America, is that if you want to have a discussion about something, that in itself is a sin for the left. So let's say, for argument's sake, you want to debate gay marriage. This is what you'll get. Why do you want to debate that? It's settled. No, I actually want to talk about it in an open and honest debate about the merits of gay marriage. Should we recognize gay marriage? There's a lot to talk about. No, there's nothing to talk about. You'll either listen, and the reason, and you only want to have that conversation because you hate gay people. And in the case of Matt Taibbi, okay, what did he say? Like you mentioned, you got the Hispanic girl coming in from the Dominican Republic. You got going on Medicare. All right. I think bilingual education is a mistake. And he says, I'm pretty sure that's not okay or to be happy about that as a taxpayer. So as a taxpayer, you're telling me if I'm not willing to spend money on everything that they want me to spend money on through my taxes, then somehow I'm a hater. That's a major problem in this country.
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be truthful with you. I personally think we're entering a very dark, dark period in America. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. And frankly, the Republicans don't have the political will to fight it. They don't. I'm sorry. They don't. And the media is the machine that's behind it. You see, they've brainwashed people. The sickest part about this is a lot of people are so woke to this that they actually think that they're being patriotic by agreeing with this man to be censored. And it's a patriotic act. And I'll be honest with you, outside of A Miracle Joe, I swear, I think about this sometimes when we prepare for the show, when I read these stories. I'll be truthful with you. I don't see us coming out of it. I wish I could say honest to God.
I agree.
Honest to God. I wish I could say different, but I don't.
Joe, we've said on the show before, sometimes going through the stories, and I want to address Paul Ann in a second, sometimes going through the stories, okay, make me seriously depressed. In the same way, like I'm not saying you get depressed, but where you say to yourself, where you question it, says, like I go through the story sometimes, like a story like this one and a couple others we're going to cover, okay, in relation to free speech. And I say, exactly that. I'm like, this is America? No, I grew up in an America that I thought, now here's the other, the hypocrisy of the left, okay, is that I thought in America everything goes. They say pornography is free speech.
That's fine.
All right, that's fine. But if a taxpayer complains about how his tax dollars are being spent, all of a sudden you're going to blackball me from society? Paul Ann, just real quick, I don't want to dwell on it. Yes, Taibbi, I believe, is a liberal, but I'm going to give you another example too. Somebody mentioned, I think it was even you, said they eat their own. You can't say anything. See, if you're a conservative, they expect you to argue with them. If you're a liberal, they expect you to toe the line. So if you're a liberal who makes a reasonable statement, which I think Taibbi's statement was a reasonable statement. Again, that's what we're saying. Is it a reasonable statement? Okay. Well, they don't care about that either. And, remember something, just to give you an example, just as an example, here's the same guy. See, I like guys like this. Now, even though I know he's a liberal, I probably don't agree with him on much. But like this is what got him in trouble 10 years ago when it came to Goldman Sachs. Just to show you exactly where he's coming from, he said the world's most powerful investment bank is a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money. Now, you would ask yourself a question. Why would that get him in trouble with the left? Because the banks and the left are all in bed now, and they have been for quite some time. I think you would agree with me. You're in bed. They're all woke.
Well, all the people in corporate America, it's not, it's banking, but it's everything. It's money. It's the elites. You have to be on board with this or you're out. Whether you agree with it or not, especially in those upper echelons of any corporation and or communities. Like, we live in a very it's solidly middle class town, I would say. It's not rich, it's not poor. It's solidly middle class. That's where we live. But in some upper, middle class and some, higher end towns, if you're not on board with this, you are out. I mean, out. And here's the thing, and in all honesty, with regard to Taibbi's statement, you could disagree with it. We could have a debate about it. You're free to do that. I could see someone having an opinion. I'm just being fair that say, well, I disagree with you, Matt, and this. But to blackball him for that statement, it had nothing to do with the fact that he's picking on a young girl from the Dominican Republic. He's basically saying that people are coming into this country and taking advantage of our Medicare system, whether they were from the Dominican Republic, Greece, Italy, Australia, anywhere. That wasn't where he was going.
But that's where they took him.
But
you understand
no, I totally
know.
But this is where we're at. And this is the thing. And this is, if you ask me, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, well, so you're echoing.
It's only going to get worse.
Said that. Joe said that a number of times at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello has said that a million times. Joe started by saying we're entering a very dark time. We all know we're already in the dark time. But as Joe said, and somebody echoed it in the chat room, it will get worse. Now, here's the thing. I do feel, and again, it's a gut feeling. You got to tell me what you think. I think between Parler coming back, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Gab in our next segment, okay, because it has to do with free speech, okay, and all these alternative social media. Did you hear that it was announced that Donald Trump is going to come back?
Actually.
Now, again, I'm just saying this as a fact, okay? How it's going to all play out, we don't know. Donald Trump is going to be back by starting his own social media company, okay? Now, the reason why I bring that up as something hopeful is not because it's Donald Trump per se, but it strikes me that people are thinking the way you're talking about. What they're doing is they're saying, I'm fed up with this. Here's a guy that we're describing, Mac Taibbi, okay? Let me give you another example that we've talked about on the show before, okay? If all of you remember the story of Juan Williams. Juan Williams is a nauseating liberal. I said that a million times on this show. But he was so unfairly treated by the left, and he's a really lockstep. Apologize for anything on the five. That's why I stopped watching the five. Because I really can't put up with it. He's so one-sided. But we've said before, here's a guy who made a statement a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple of years ago, that he feels uncomfortable when he's on a plane and he sees men who appear to be Middle Eastern. Now, that after 9/11 is a reasonable thing. Juan Williams doesn't hate Middle Easterners, but it triggered something in his mind. He thought in his mind, well, this kind of makes me feel a little uncomfortable, okay? I don't think he said anything hateful whatsoever. NPR fired him, okay? He was blackballed from all the liberal media. And the very place that, what bothers me about him is the very place that gives him a home. In other words, he doesn't even have any semblance of objectivity. So he should know full well, Joe Rossinello, I mean, you tell me what you think. He should know full well, you can't be with these leftists and disagree with them on anything and step out of line, as Matt Taibbi, as we know from Matt Taibbi and from Juan Williams and many others. You cannot step out of line. If you step out of line even a little bit, no matter how much you call yourself a liberal, you're in trouble.
Well, that's why they're all terrified, because let's be honest, it's threatening their very comfortable lifestyle. It's a very comfortable lifestyle. We're going to talk about our next story about the governor of Texas. Very similar. We could break that down. But I mean, listen, these people make a lot of money and they're not willing to give it up. This is all, I'll be honest with you, it's like the emperor's new clothes. I am utterly convinced of it. This is all just what's in right now. But I actually think it's a power grab. That's the bigger piece of this is it's a power grab, and they've taken away our freedoms. You see, I mean, not to harp on the election, but if the Republicans had a spine and fought with equal vigor the Democratic machine, and if the courts did not allow people who were not legislators to make rules in states to change the playing field with voting, and Donald Trump became the president, and it would have been a chaotic 4 years, but if they held the line, everything would have been back to normal. But they didn't. They don't have the political will. They gave up freedom for perceived comfort. Big mistake. Freedom is fought for every day.
Right.
It has been given up. And they do not have the political will. We have, what's his face? Becerra just got voted in as the, what's it called? Secretary for Health and Human Services.
Talk about something that got me down.
Do you know that one Republican did not show up to vote?
Who?
It was 50 to 49. Someone didn't vote.
See, now I was trying to look to find who that was.
But it's 49. There's 50 Republicans, right?
Right.
Outside of your mother died, outside of something insane, I don't know how you don't show up for that. That day.
Here's a guy as the head of the HHS. He will take away not only your religious freedom, he'll impose the Equality Act, which will take away what we're talking about tonight, which is your freedom of speech. You don't
show up for
that vote. And then, but here's the kicker, Joe. Here's the kicker. But that person will still go to his district and still say, vote for me.
But that's
I'm pro-life. I'm for a traditional family. Well, if you're pro-life and you're for traditional family, why wouldn't you show up to vote against Javier Becerra?
He's not even qualified because he has you see, he was put in there to be an attack dog. He doesn't even, and many senators said that. Actually, some liberal senators, liberal Republicans said that. They basically said, notice Mitt Romney didn't vote for him.
And that's saying a lot.
But I'm just saying,
I mean, that's really saying a lot.
My point is, this guy did not have the qualifications for the job. He's simply a leftist. That's why they gave him the job. And I don't know who it was, but there are 50 Republicans in that Senate. So one person didn't vote. I want to know who that is.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean. The Republicans, this is why I'm not a Republican.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. They make me nauseous.
Yeah.
They don't have the political will. We are going to, as a country, get steamrolled. There's a professor at Notre Dame, Deneen. I can't think of his first name. Professor
Patrick Deneen.
Bingo.
Yeah.
He's a political science professor, and he's like well-read, and he's not only is well-read, he's written a lot of books. Anyway, this is what he said. I read this week in First Things about basically the landscape of America. And many intellectuals are saying it. He basically said, America is in decline. The reason why it's in decline is because of the left, and the left is collapsing under their own hypocrisy. It's the truth. It is the truth.
Well, haven't we seen that
straight away?
Haven't we seen that our entire lives? All right. Now, Joe and I are around 50-ish. I'm a little older. All right. I know I have to admit that I'm a little older than you, but we're 50-ish. We've been seeing this our whole lives. We had a drumbeat our whole lives. Again, growing up in the 70s, I wasn't so young that I didn't understand things like Kent State. Okay. And different causes, all right, that my father and all the Italian guys used to sit around talking about. You think these were stupid guys, these blue-collar guys? They were talking about Berkeley, free speech. They were talking about Kent State. They were talking about the Vietnam War. I remember it like it was yesterday with the cigarette smoke filling up the kitchen with all the little kids running around, okay? My point is this. We've been seeing this our whole lives. They are supposed to be champions of free speech, the ACLU. They're champions of free speech. You don't, Alan Dershowitz, I don't know how he's become a darling of the right. Alan Dershowitz gave this country pornography as a protected right under the First Amendment because he's the one who argued it in front of the Supreme Court. But I can't turn around and I can't say something, let's say that's critical of what the government does. Let me tell you, we're going to get into another story right after this, okay? We're going to talk about the smear, and it's what it is, the smear of anti-Semitism. But that's just one protected group. You have the black liberal establishment. You have the homosexual liberal establishment. You have the feminist liberal establishment. In this case, you have all these establishment groups that if you just criticize him in any innocuous way, doesn't have to be vicious. In other words, of course, if you say you want people to die, that's a problem, okay? But if you complain like Taibbi did and say something about, well, as a taxpayer, you think I should be concerned with that? For you to be vilified and blackballed from society and ostracized, right. But the hypocrisy is the reason why I bring it up, because you brought up the hypocrisy. 50 years I've been hearing about ACLU and the left talking about free speech, free speech, free speech. They're the opposite of free speech. Now, not that they were ever for it to begin with, and we can measure that in hindsight. Okay. And I think you would all agree with us on that. Okay. They were never for free speech, but now they're blatantly anti-free speech is my point, Joe.
Oh, it's a given. And we'll give another example of it. Do you want to go to the next story in Texas?
I do want to say this because Joe mentioned Republicans, and then we'll go. Okay. One thing that Taibbi had said, now this should speak to like what our view is of Republicans, because this is what the mainstream media has now done. So Taibbi saying he has identified a crucial shift in the American mainstream media. Quote, instead of appearing as props in a phony, this guy's spot on with this, by the way, in a phony rendering of objectivity, Republicans and basically all non-Fox media have been moved off the legitimacy spectrum and appear as foils only. Allowable opinion is now depicted stretching all the way from one brand of moderate Democrat, like they try to present Joe Biden as, to another. Reporters once had to at least pretend to be something other than courtiers, as it was considered unseemly to openly gush about a party or a politician. That is exactly right. Okay. And again, we're not defending Fox News, but at the end of the day, if you're a Republican and you go on MSNBC or CNN, shame on you, because all they are going to do before you go on is preface everything with, here's a Republican, here's the problem with this country. And that's how they present everything now. So that even if you're a liberal Republican, you mentioned Susan Collins. I think you mentioned Susan Collins about voting against Becerra. Okay.
Well, I don't know who did.
She probably did.
I don't know.
My guess is that to get 50 Republicans, she probably did. She's now the bad guy. She's now the bad guy. So it's a very important point to make about why we can't align ourselves with political parties, because we know the way the left treats Republicans, and that's what they're doing in the mainstream media right now. But yeah, let's again, real quick. Michael Corleone in The Godfather, okay? Remember what he said to Tom Hagen after he apologized for having fired Tom Hagen for being his consigliere. And he turned around to me and says, Tom, I did that because Pop always told me, keep your enemies close. Or no, I think it was keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, okay? And we have to be careful who we keep close to us, okay? Because the people that we look to, they're just a letdown. One after the this is what Joe was just talking about. We are let down right across the board as those of us who consider ourselves conservative, okay? All the time. Listen to this nonsense coming out of Texas.
Well, Michelle Malkin wrote an article. She entitled it The Antisemitism Smear. Basically what happened is, this is what she had to say. Everything you need to know about the fair weather friends of the First Amendment can be found by examining the phonies on the left and the right, who hurl reckless charges of anti-Semitism to stigmatize and silence their political foes. This is the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, flanked by two GOP state legislators, sponsoring a bill to support a state-supported Holocaust and Genocide Commission, declared anti-Semitic platforms like Gab have no place in Texas and certainly do not represent Texas values. This is the same presidential aspirant who just 2 weeks ago had launched a Lone Star State war on big tech censorship. In a widely covered press event, Abbott called Silicon Valley's deplatforming of conservatives un-American, un-Texan, and unacceptable. And now he wants to deplatform Gab. Now, here's the interesting twist. He's saying that they're anti-Semitic. Now, we have two examples of Jewish journalists who feel otherwise. This is
very important.
Amy Meck. She's with the Rare Foundation. She's a Jewish activist. She said this: I support this Christian-run business, said Meck, and I thank them for creating a free speech platform. Another Jewish journalist, Laura Loomer, this is what she said. As a free speech platform, the fact that Gab allows even the most offensive speech to exist on its platform is a testament to its commitment to truly being a free speech platform.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Two Jewish people disagree with the governor of Texas. Now, why would he do this? This is what the CEO of Gab has to say, and who is an unapologetic Christian. And obviously he created a platform that is truly open to anything. That's what Facebook claims to be. Clearly, it's not the case. This is what he said. He said, follow the money, Andrew Torba, who is the CEO of Gab. He notes that while Abbott trashes Silicon Valley for clicks and cable TV hits, he's aggressively luring high-tech companies like Tesla, Oracle, and Hewlett-Packard to move to Texas.
Well, like you said, money always moves the dial, right? So you got to worry about that. Real quick, just to clarify, we want to get back into the story. Dennis, hey Dennis, what's happening? Thanks for fact checking us, brother. Collins did vote to advance Becerra.
Okay,
so I'm gonna take Dennis at his word. Okay, so Collins did vote for it, and we don't know who the one who abstained.
Well, there you go.
Gornai said that person did have actually a death in the family. We don't know. If you want to provide the information, please do it in the chat room. Joe and I are always open to correction. We do not. We if somebody wants to say, hey guys, you might have had your fact a little bit screwed up there, we're open to correction, so that's fine. But I think this is so important. Now, here's my problem. Greg Abbott is Catholic, okay, which bothers us. I know it doesn't bother everybody, bothers the crap out of us, okay? Why are you caving in? So you got to remember something. If you look at, and let's keep this just for a second with the Jewish community, okay? Dennis Prager was shut down by Facebook, Prager University. Dennis Prager's a Jew. He's a conservative, moral law-following Jew, okay? And he's deplatformed by Facebook. Now, is anybody going to come to his defense?
Oh, no.
Is the Anti-Defamation League, which I'm sorry, they could call themselves a Jewish organization all they want. They're a leftist organization. They want to put the clamp down on free speech right across the board.
For Prager. You see,
why wouldn't they?
Because here's what they're missing here, guys. It's not going to happen for a long time, but eventually it is going to happen. And then you may get a fascist. Enjoy your hour, but the pendulum swings from right to left.
That's right.
You may get a monster. You may get a monster. Do you know why Donald Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices? Thank Harry Reid. It used to be where you had to have 60 votes to get a Supreme Court justice on the bench. Why? Because it's for life. And the founders, who were brilliant, understood that there are politics that are involved. So they wanted more of a blended candidate to be put up. Harry Reid took it away. Now they're saying that nothing's off the table with regard to the filibuster. Do you know what that will cause in this country? The radical behavior on both sides of the aisle, it doesn't always work in your favor. Mr. Reid knows that. Believe me, he probably wakes up in the middle of the night in cold sweats because he knows why Donald Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices.
It's all his doing.
Thank him.
And you could thank Joe Biden, too. But Joe's talking about the filibuster, but you could thank Biden, too, with his Biden rule. But go ahead.
But my point of the matter is this. Enjoy your hour, but the pendulum swings from right to left. It happened in the 50s that conservative persecuted Hollywood liberals. They pushed them out of the country. People had to go to Mexico to live. Couldn't get a job. Now it's the opposite. It could go to the other side of the spectrum. And it could be ugly. And this is what I'm saying. Step away, take your political hat off for a second. This is craziness. And here's the thing. Again, you can't talk to these people. You can't. And in their mind, they're being patriotic. And frankly, I think it's an ugly period of our history. And I'm going to be honest with you. I actually think America, I think it's done. Outside of a miracle that's going to solve this problem, it all stems from we no longer have an anchor.
Do you know what the miracle is, Joe?
We don't.
You know what the miracle is? The miracle is people start developing a backbone in this country, okay? They start to grow some stones, all right? And they start to resist. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? Let's say you work for a Catholic organization, a decidedly Catholic, or like an agency within the Catholic Church. Then you do have to sign a morals clause, okay, that you agree with the Catholic Church on issues. Now, but if you go to work, if I want to go to live in a certain state, or if I want to go to work for a certain company, I'm not signing anything that makes me promise that I'm going to do something that you agree with in my private life. And if I don't sign that, then I'm not either going to be able to be a resident of your state, or I'm not going to be able to be employed by your company. All right, now that's happening with the woke corporatists, where they want sooner or later they're going to have you sign something that says you're in favor of gay marriage. We'll cross that bridge when Frontline with Joe and Joe get to it down the road. But I want you to hear this. Now, I don't care what you think. I don't care what anybody thinks of American foreign policy towards the state of Israel and the Middle East in general. This should not be allowed. This was where Glenn Greenwald, okay, and Glenn Greenwald is no conservative. Oh, he's not, okay? He's an independent journalist and lawyer. Glenn Greenwald reported that Abbott was the prime cheerleader for a bill in Texas, ultimately ruled unconstitutional, to ban the state from hiring anyone who refuses to pledge support for Israel by promising not to privately boycott them. And he's an enemy of free speech. Now, that's Glenn Greenwald, who's a liberal, saying that. Why are you asking me whether or not, let's say I don't want to do business with China. That's totally, let's say, a legitimate position. So let's say, for argument's sake, California is making a bunch of money with China. How about the NBA? They're all making money in China. What if I said I'm going to privately boycott China? Could I then be barred from public life, or I can't become a citizen of your state? What do you care whether or not I boycott the state of Israel? You know who has a lot of problems with the state of Israel? Other Jews. You don't hear from them because, like Dennis Prager, they're banned out of existence too. You don't hear their criticism. And when I say criticism, I mean, again, reasonable positions. Let's say that's talking about, in this case, American foreign policy. Well, American foreign policy is something that you should be able to talk about, because that involves potentially troops going into battle and dying. So you need to talk about these things. But if you're going to say, right, like it's the same thing as the beginning of our conversation, if you're going to say that it's not legitimate to even have a conversation.
Well, it's a tactic.
Exactly. Well, exactly
That's
right.
it.
But I don't think it, but again, we're talking about what's American and what's not American. That's not American. You cannot do that.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, what's going on now in politics. It's a tactic to shut you down. I mean, we've given up freedom for perceived comfort. I'm telling you, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. I think it will eventually get better, but it's not going to be better for a while. Because again, we don't have an anchor in anything. People determine their own truth. I mean, I read something today. It's a great magazine, First Things. And it was an editorial. And basically that they were saying that there was an internist. This is a doctor. They were doing rounds and questioning, saying that, yes, this person is a male by science, but it's still not determined yet. Like, you went to med school? I mean, I'll give you another example. I was on LinkedIn. I saw a friend of mine who works in, what's it called? Real estate, but like buying like big buildings around the world, like court offices, whatever. And he mentioned somebody in one of his blurbs. This woman works in Toronto, in parentheses next to her name. This is a professional person that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, puts he, she next to it. I saw that. I was like, that's her pronouns. And she's putting it next to her name.
Right. That means
that means she's crazy. That's what that means to me. That means she's crazy. She's a woman.
I was waiting for the punchline.
No, I'm
right.
sorry.
She's a lunatic.
That's lunacy.
Right.
And I'm going to be honest with you. But this is what it is.
Robbie's in Texas. Robbie says, now this is important, okay? Because if you think it won't get to this place, you're not seeing what's going on. Joe said 3 times today, and a few people mentioned that this is just the beginning. The times are getting darker. Don't think there's limits on where they're going. Robbie's saying, hey, Tom Gugliotta's here. What's up, Tom? Robbie's saying 2 + 2 = 17, okay? Don't think it won't go there. You remember the scene, and I always go back to the movie. I read the book years ago, but I always go back to the movie 1984 because I love Richard Burton and I love John Hurt, right? And Richard Burton has John Hurt in the chair, okay, in that room that you do not want to be in, okay? And they're applying pain to him. Like they're turning up the electricity and they're applying pain. And John Hurt, who's a great actor, is like screaming in agony. And Richard Burton looks at him and he says, how many fingers, Winston? And he says, 4. They turn it up, right? They turn it back down. Richard Burton says, how many fingers, Winston? Isn't it 5? He says, I only see 4. They turn it back up. John Hurt's yelling, right? They turn it back down. And one more time, he says, how many fingers, Winston? He says, I want to see 5. but I only see 4. Do you see like how profound that is? People think, well, that's far-fetched. We're going through it now. Joe just said this woman wants to be called a he, she, when they're a biological male, okay, or a biological, whatever it is. So instead of saying, well, I see a man, well, okay, but I see a man. That's what it's coming down
and
to.
Here's the thing: you have to. Actually, it was Hershey. She was.
Isn't that a candy bar?
But it should be. But I'll be honest with you. Do you actually have to say that? It's just to say, I'm with you. I'm woke too.
Right.
And this is what I mean. This is, if you ask me, it's lunacy. And everyone has to play along. And this is where it should scare you. It should scare you if you're a Democrat. I'm going to be honest with you. It really should. This is craziness.
Well, you keep saying all the time correctly. Okay, I'm not going to say, I don't want it to. We're on the subject. So let's talk about this for a second. We're mostly a Catholic audience here. Okay, hopefully we're reaching a much wider group, because obviously this doesn't pertain to only Catholics. Okay, I'm not prepared to take away somebody's right to speak freely. Okay, now I'm prepared to ban pornography, because I don't consider that to be speech at all. All right, but unless it's like the old saying goes, as written in a Supreme Court case, you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. So you can't incite violence. You can't teach people how to build a bomb and then say, go blow up the federal building or anything like that. But as far as those things that we find offensive, let's say, for argument's sake, let's take primo example number 1 in my book, Sarah Silverman. Okay. Sarah Silverman not only is not condemned by the ADL, okay, she's applauded by the ADL. And I'm not exaggerating, because, again, I give facts and Joe gives facts to back up what we say. Sarah Silverman looked right in the screen and called Christians MFers. She said, listen, you Christian MFers. That's one instance. I'm only going to give you 2, but there's many, okay? And the other one was where she said, if Jesus came back today, I'd nail him to a cross again. Now, that's what she said. I'm not putting those words in her mouth. She said that. The ADL does not somehow, some way, under their own friggin' standard, think that that's hate speech. But here's the difference between us and them. I don't consider that hate speech. What I consider that to be is something that we need to answer in the free marketplace of ideas. We need to challenge her. We need to chastise her in the free marketplace of ideas. We need to condemn her words in the free marketplace of ideas and do it unapologetically. And when she turns around and says, you're being anti-Semite, you say, I'm not attacking you because you're a Jew. I'm attacking you because you're an anti-Christian. Is what you are. And aside from being the worst comedian of all time, she's not even funny, that woman. She's not. But my point is this. If you're for free, and you tell me what you think, Joe, tell me where I'm off. If you're for free speech, then you're for free speech. And free speech is not for thin-skinned people. If you're going to be thin-skinned in America and everything somebody says bothers you, turn off the TV. All right, turn off the TV and stop going on social media, because you're going to be offended by something. You're either on board with free speech or you're not. And if you are, you better be prepared, okay, that people are going to say things that are going to be offensive to you. My larger point, you do not have the right not to be offended. And you can't just attack people by calling them haters when they say, I'm offended by you. I'm offended by what you say. Is that anything I said you disagree with?
It's just a tool. It's a tool to shut you down. And that's what you're seeing. I mean, it's a tool to shut down their political, basically, opposition. And we're seeing that everywhere. And frankly, the media is feeding it to the people, and the people are eating it up. And I'll be honest with you, the media controls the masses because it's on 24/7. And there's so many people, they're brainwashed. There's no talking to them. Like, I don't talk New Jersey politics because New Jersey is a lost cause. It's going bankrupt.
You talk about a miracle. Needing a miracle.
And I'll be truthful with you. America, it comes down to this. We don't know who we are anymore because we don't have God in our culture. Sorry. That's why we don't know who we are.
Think about that for a second. All right. Stay on that for just a second. Okay. God is truth. Am I wrong?
That's the last time I heard he's the way, the truth, and the life. That's what he said. Not me.
If I believe in my heart of hearts that I'm speaking the truth, explain this to me. And any of you, please explain this to me. Should I fear the free marketplace of ideas if I know not only I have the nerve and the courage to speak the truth, but I have the knowledge and the intelligence to defend the truth. Should I fear anything in public, in the public arena? I shouldn't fear anything. Should I look to tell the government to shut you down because I don't know how to argue with you?
But it's not about that. It's about power.
But that's you're going where I was going. And please expand on that, because here's the thing. If I shut you down, I control, like Joe said, the narrative, and that gives me more power. They're not interested in winning debates. They're not actually interested in being right. In fact, that's why I brought up the truth. They know they're liars when they're calling men women and women men. They know they're lying. A 5-year-old boy, they know the 5-year-old boy can't be a 5-year-old girl. They know all these things. What do they try to do? Shut you down by saying, by basically, because the reason why I bring up the truth is they know they're liars. They know that their positions are indefensible. They know that you'll crush them in a debate. Therefore, they need the government and big tech to shut you down. Therefore, they put the kibosh on debate.
Well, you notice every time the Republicans say something that possibly could move forward, they basically throw, there was a June 6th riot out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, why do you think that they tried to impeach Donald Trump even when he wasn't even in the presidency, so he couldn't run again? It's about power. This is a power grab, people. And frankly, and here's the sick part about it. It's so transparent. You don't even have to be smart to see it. It's so transparent. I think America sees this as clear as day. It's like what Solzhenitsyn said. He said, they're lying. We know they're lying. They know they're lying, yet they keep lying.
See, that was in a nutshell you just summed up what was my larger point. They know they're lying. That's why they need to shut you down. And they're being, let's face it, they've been successful unless we turn around. Okay, as many people are saying, now we mentioned Donald Trump might start a social media company. Let's see how that goes. It'll be widely popular because he's got his name attached to it. So let's see how it goes. Let's see if we develop secure lines of communication.
They'll arrest him. Joe, we're getting to the point where people are soon, like, I'll be truthful with you, I don't think we live in the land of the free and the home of the brave anymore. They just, like, it makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, perfect sense, or they'll kill him. Like, this is where we're at. We live in a banana republic now. This is a joke. All of it is a farce.
We used to criticize other countries for being banana republics, where you had stolen elections and all that kind of stuff, and you know, when we say, oh, look at that banana republic, what are we?
It's a joke.
What are we? We're not run by a cabal. Joe Biden's president. Does anybody really believe Joe Biden's president? Even liberals don't believe Joe Biden's president. Okay, the guy can't speak. He's getting worse and worse every single day. All right, Kamala standing right there ready to come in. And we told you before on the front line with Joe and Joe, she ain't going to be president either. She'll sit in the chair. She ain't going to make any decisions. I hope everybody understands. Kamala Harris is not making any decisions. We're run by a cabal of left-wing community organizers, headed by community organizer-in-chief Barack Obama. If you think he's not in power, then you're not seeing exactly what's going on. You're not seeing it. But the reason why I bring it up is, are we moving to the? We're going to move to Iowa, because it's the reason why I want to talk about it. It's kind of a reiteration of a couple stories we did a few weeks ago, but it bears talking because we're here. Joe and I are always here. We say we've got a lot to complain about. All you good people out there watching the front line with Joe and Joe, you got a lot to complain about out there, but we need to find solutions. So Joe and I, we were talking to E. Michael Jones with Dr. Marek Hodekievic. We were talking about Poland and Hungary and the state of Florida with DeSantis. Well, here's another hopeful story that shows that people not only are tired, but they're taking action. And we must take action. Go ahead, Joe.
The Iowa House of Representatives, they're considering a bill. It's Bill 633. It's an act relating to certain companies that censor online content. So the legislation would ensure that residents of the Hawkeye State have their First Amendment rights to freedom of expression of political speech protected from big tech censorship. If residents are found, this is the important part, if residents are found to have their constitutionally protected rights violated by a dominant social media company, the Office of the Iowa Attorney General shall assess a civil penalty. If enough people come forward and they prosecute and level penalties, it will change.
Yes.
I'll believe it when I see it, though.
I think
You
you're starting to see.
I hope so, Joe. I have no confidence anymore. I swear.
But here's one reason why I have a little bit of confidence. All right, my brother Joe Resinello always makes the point. Money moves the dial. Now, these companies, these big tech companies, let's be fair. If half the American people stopped, let's say, using Twitter, for example, Twitter's still going to have a very valuable market cap. Okay, it needs to be more of a worldwide movement to really take them down significantly, where their stock is cut in half, where their market cap is cut in half. Okay, but nonetheless, it would be a good start for this reason. We mentioned, let's keep it with America, okay? But Poland is doing the same thing. I think it was called the Freedom Act or something along those lines.
I think you're right.
In Poland, but it's modeled the same way. If you can't show, okay, or if the citizen, in this case of the state of Iowa, or DeSantis did it in Florida, I believe the author, Samantha Fillmore, she's with the Heartland Institute. She mentioned Missouri has similar legislation. New Hampshire has similar legislation. Florida has similar legislation. Here's the crux of it for all you to know. If you're, let's say, under DeSantis's bill or under the Iowa bill, if you're a resident of Iowa and you say something on social media that is legally protected speech under the laws of the state of Iowa, the big tech company, and if you're censored by, let's just say, Facebook, let's use Facebook for an example. If you're censored by Facebook, Facebook has 30 days under this legislation to tell you why you were censored. And if they either come back with a lame argument or no argument, then you can assess a fine. Now, if I remember our story correctly, in Poland, they want to assess $100,000 per incident. I think Florida wants to do the same thing, okay? Either way, that might not seem like a lot. $100,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money. Hell, $10,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money. But multiply that by all the millions and millions of people that they're censoring, okay? They may stop doing it. Now, they'll challenge it in court. There's no question they'll challenge it in court. But I think that the states will win because they'll say, wait a minute, our people have a right to free speech. That means it's the same thing as Alexander Graham Bell. Graham Bell didn't invent the telephone and then say, but I'm going to tell you what you can say over the phone. Unless you're committing a crime, you can say what you want over the telephone, okay? So my point is, these companies have become utilities. A lot of people are arguing they become utilities because they're just, how do you communicate nowadays? Communicate online, all right? You cannot censor our speech. And I think it's a good step forward. What do you think?
It is, but I'll believe it when I see it. And what I mean by that is this. They have a lot of powerful friends. Look what happened in Georgia with regard to when they started. Georgia's a conservative state for the most part. I mean, you have Atlanta, but outside of Atlanta, it's a super, super red state. It's the South. What happened? Georgia puts forth some pretty aggressive anti-abortion legislation. They also, Hollywood stepped in. They started to give breaks, Hollywood, to bring the movie business to Georgia. So what happened? They started pressing buttons, pushing back. That's what I think will happen in Iowa. I think they will band together. Businesses will boycott them. They have the power base. You see, the power is embracing this. See, this is what I mean. Like, they'll shut them down by their own leverage. This is what I think will happen. They will basically say, okay, we're going to pull out of Iowa. And guess what will happen? The governor of Iowa, just like Governor Abbott in Texas, which is redder than red outside of the cities, caves because they are not willing to fight for principle, because they want to sacrifice freedom for perceived comfort. They do not have the political will. I'll be honest with you. I would have went to war with you if I was the president. You'd be thankful I'm not the president. I would have not respected federalism, and I would not have allowed Minneapolis, St. Paul to burn. The National Guard would have been in there day 2. You could protest. You're not hurting anybody. And if you do, you are in handcuffs. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're Hispanic. I don't care if you're Asian. And you will be in jail. And if you come out and you do it again, you'll be in jail tomorrow.
Right.
And believe me, they should have done that. They don't have the political will.
Let me ask you this, though. When it comes to let's say federal legislation, Okay, let's say that those who keep telling us they're going to do something about big tech, I got no reason to disbelieve Ted Cruz. I got no reason to disbelieve Josh Hawley. Okay, but when is the federal government going to look? Because the left, the liberals in the federal government are not going to do anything against big tech because they're all in bed together. But as far as the conservatives, let's say their narrative, conventional wisdom, okay, that in 2022 they're going to sweep the House of Representatives and they're going to sweep the Senate. Let's say that's true. Are we going to just be having this conversation in 2 years again? Are you going to come on the front line with Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello? Are you going to come on here and we're going to be having this same conversation? Or are they finally maybe going to do something about it? Do something about Section 230? Do something about the fact that they have monopoly status in this country, okay, and break them up the way when Joe and I were kids, they broke the communications company. They broke up the phone company.
I remember.
That's where the term baby bells comes from. They thrived. They made money. No problem. They got broken up because they were in a monopoly. Facebook needs to get broken up. YouTube or Google in general needs to get broken up. All right. Twitter needs to they need to get broken up. Somebody recently called them nations. I had a hard time disagreeing with that description of them. They're super duper powerful.
Oh, please.
A few of them, like Apple and Google and Amazon, they have more of a market capitalization than 90% of the countries in the world.
There's only 2 platforms to get to what's it called, to operate. That's Trump's dilemma. Like my wife was explaining this to me because I don't even like Android. Mm-hmm. It's controlled by 2 sources.
Well, they might have to do something about that. And real quick, I'm glad you're mentioning that. It's a very important conversation because Joe and I say all the time, we are not partisan in this regard. Okay. Conservatives need to get it through their head. We are not going to allow big tech to do whatever it wants in the name of free market economics. If government action is required, government action is required. That doesn't make Joe and I socialists or communists. That makes us reasonable. Okay, we want government action because these companies are a threat to my liberty, and I don't care about how much money they want to bring down to the bottom line. I don't care about their share price, and I don't care about that intrusion by the government into the free market. I want them to do something to take their power away because the more power they have, the less power we all have. And that's my problem with it.
See, eventually, I was just saying this to my wife, this is the scary part, actually. Eventually it's going to shift, and believe me, when it does, it's going to be ugly. It will be ugly, like, because the people, you enrage people to a point, it will be ugly. Yeah. That's what is going, because it's so perceivable that this is a farce, that the people are not in control.
Right.
It's so perceivable.
And think about this. You make a very good point. Okay. The reason why it's so important to make sure we preserve those God-given rights we have, which are enshrined in the First Amendment, okay, amongst others, all right, is that if you start telling people, okay, now I'm going to be very angry if I don't have the right to free speech. If they take us down, I'm going to be angry. I'm not picking up a gun.
No way.
And I'm not blowing. I'm going to start trying to do protests. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to protest the government for the redress of grievances peacefully. I'm going to do that. Okay. But you have to understand something. It is a very, very angering thing when you take away somebody's God-given right to speak freely. When
How about take away voting?
Well,
that's where people, what do you think happened on January 6th, Joe?
That's why people were up. That's why how many hundreds of thousands of people showed up. They had no intention of storming the Capitol. They were there because they thought Mike Pence might do the right thing and give the states another 10 days. And I think it would have had a difference in hindsight. Okay. But there's a lot of people who are very frustrated, and a lot of people, okay, don't have self-restraint, unfortunately. Okay. Now we know the left has no self-restraint because they have no moral restraints, but we do. Okay. At least we claim to. So we need to, but it is a very frustrating thing when you can somehow, and again, we're talking about labeling something hate speech. Okay. If I say something because I have a concern about it, and your best response to me is that I'm a hater, and you're going to pass legislation that's going to take away my right to speak freely because you think that it's hate speech, Joe, that causes problems, Joe. Well, that causes problems.
Well, I agree. And this is where, and here we are.
And here we are.
This is what I mean. This is why America, if you ask me, outside of a miracle, is finished. It's finished. because you can't build a house on sand and it doesn't get more sand as far as the foundation than this. It's all garbage.
Right.
It's sad, actually. And when it does fall, it's going to be ugly. It's going to have ramifications around the globe.
That's right. That's right.
It's very sad. It's very sad. I mean,
and dark. You mentioned dark. It's very dark time.
I mean, look at Russia. Didn't last 100 years, guys.
And they were the most
years.
And let's be clear about Russia. Let's be clear about the Soviet Union. And I think you can make a valid historical argument for them. In that at some period within that 70-year period, they were the strongest nation to ever have existed on this planet. They had more control over more parts of the world and on their own people than any other regime in human history. And they only lasted 70 years. Okay. So think about that. Now, do we want to go through that? My answer would be no. I don't want to go through that.
And why are we doing this? Because we don't want to live within boundaries. It comes down to that. We reject the boundaries that society places on people, so you have a civilization. I read something, this is what we're going to cover on our Crusade show. In San Francisco, they make shoplifting anything under $900 a misdemeanor. So the people in San Francisco know this, so they're robbing amounts under $900, and it's basically like a traffic ticket. So are you going to set up a business in San Francisco?
Why would you?
Of course not. You're going to have a business where people are going to basically come in, steal things, hundreds of dollars, theft, and it's basically a misdemeanor. Civilization doesn't operate that way. But they cannot wrap their arms and hands around the idea that there are rules. They can't. And what's going to happen? It's going to collapse. That's why Deneen said, America's in decline. It's the left's it's because of the left, and the left is collapsing under their own hypocrisy.
That's right.
There it is. Listen, it doesn't matter. Call yourself a Republican, call yourself a Democrat. When the roof falls down, it falls down on everybody. And it's going to fall. I'm telling you right now. And believe me, I'm a very happy and optimistic guy, but I'm also a realist. I don't see us getting out of this. I really don't, because I don't see people have the will. They don't have the political will.
I think one of the reasons that you could say, and then we'll move on because we want to get to another threat to another one of our freedoms, but we don't have the will because I don't think right now, and I don't want to see this, but just my personal view, I just don't think people have the feeling that their rights are being taken away. I don't think they've been beaten down sufficiently enough. When they are, like they were, remember something, this part of the reason why the Soviet Union came down was because of what happened in Poland first. Okay. The empire started to collapse going back to, let's say, the late 70s, early 1980s with solidarity and everything else. Okay. So, but those people had enough. It takes time sometimes to convince people, have you had enough? And then they punch you in the face again. Have you had enough? Oh, no, that really didn't hurt. They punch you in the face again. Okay. People haven't been beaten down sufficiently enough. And when they are, God willing, they'll stand up. They'll raise up.
But
okay?
That's the story of man. It's sad.
Isn't that all of human history?
It's constant.
That goes back Old Testament, by the way.
I was just going to say, it's a story of man. Man forgets. I mean, you talk Old Testament. Here they are. They're slaves in Israel. The Egyptians, they're slaves. Here comes Moses, right? You watch The Greatest Story Ever Told. I mean, it's on every Easter with what's his face?
Oh, no.
Charlton Heston.
No, Ten Commandments.
Ten Commandments. Okay, there we go. He gets them out.
I'm going to be watching that next week, as a matter of fact.
I mean, he gets them out, right? So what happens? They go into the desert and they bitch. So what happens? He's like, guys, they're like, we should have, at least in Egypt, we were eating.
Our bellies were full.
So what did God said? He said, you're going to grind up that statue and you're going to eat it. This is Old Testament. And then what he said is you'll be in the desert for 40 years. Why? Because he had to make you hungry. This is what happens to man. It goes on. It happened in Germany in the 20th century. It happened to Poland. 1 in 4 people died in Poland between the Germans and the Russians. That's why they're so Catholic now, because they got the living crap kicked out of them.
And it was self-imposed.
People just are that way. They get comfortable. They forget about their priorities. All hell breaks loose. Society crumbles, and it starts again. And that's where we're at, gentlemen and ladies. It's happening here.
It always seems to start, okay, with good and solid. Now, I'm talking on a particularly, a completely secular level for a second, okay? But it always starts, let's say, on certain principles. Let's say you're talking about the Roman Empire, okay? Rome had principles. They had founding principles, okay? And that's why Rome lasted 1,000 years. What happened that Rome was able to finally get overrun by the Huns and the Germanic tribes and the tribes from Gaul? Why were they overrun? Why did they fall? Number one, they departed from their founding principles. Number two, they got greedy. America we are a pretty greedy country. Okay, let's call a spade, okay? So they were greedy. They wanted to conquer everybody, and then they couldn't handle the size of the empire. They became completely debauched, okay, at the end of the empire. You always mention comfort. That's all they cared about, was screwing. That's it. I mean, they were so easily. Now, my point is this. It always starts with their first and founding principles that are usually good, okay, kind of like universal ideas. And the reason why I bring it up is America is founded on those same principles. In other words, there's the idea of, let's say, natural rights, natural law, which is infused in our founding documents. Why are we where we are now?
But Joe,
because we've departed from those founding principles.
I agree 100%, but that's why secular humanism doesn't work, because man is innately flawed. You see, what holds you to principles is God and grace, because we're who we are. You see, that's what people forget. Even the most gifted among us are flawed. And that's why John Adams said that a democracy doesn't work with a godless people. It doesn't work. And because Rome lost its principles because there's no grace. You see, this is the thing, guys. I don't care how gifted you are, or how smart you are, or how principled you are, or how disciplined you are. You're you. Just like in Kung Fu Panda. I'm me. That's why I can't do it. And that's why God came on the earth. I mean, I don't want to go on a whole biblical exegesis, but the point of the matter is, if you haven't figured out that you're flawed, I feel sorry for you. And society, when it thinks it isn't, listen, I'll be honest with you, you can't hold on to your principles. I'll be truthful with you. In life, like, that's the importance of anchoring yourself in God.
Somebody mentioned that too in the chat room, echoing what you said earlier. You have to be anchored.
And we're not.
What did Yeats say? We quoted the poem before. Yeats, the famous line: "The center cannot hold. The center cannot hold." Somebody asked in the chat room about boundaries. If you do not want to recognize, yes, those boundaries come from God, and our founding papers, our founding documents express that, okay? I like to break that to the secularists out there and the atheists, okay? But the center cannot hold when you don't have any boundaries. And hence, that's where we are now.
And that's why
we live in a society that has no, right, that's exactly right. We live in a society that does not want to recognize any boundaries to our behavior whatsoever. And in that case, and then we'll move on, the center will not hold. That's where we're at right now. So let's go. We got a couple more stories that we want to get to.
This is a good one.
Yeah, because this just, you know what it is? I'm tired of hearing about unity. I'm tired of hearing that Joe Biden is going to unify us. In 100 days or however long he's been in office, he has been the divider in chief. Now, I'm not trying to echo what MSNBC and CNN said about Donald Trump. That's actually a fact. What I just said to you, that Biden is the divider in chief, this guy has unified nothing. Not only has he not unified anything, he has divided. He has sown division. And I don't mean him, even though it's his hand signing those executive orders. I mean the people are handling him. So let's take that crock of nonsense and throw it in the garbage. And Joe's going to give you an example of what we're talking about.
So Biden fires an attorney that Trump appointed to protect America's civil liberties. So we'll break the story down. And then I wanted to just bring out one point when I read this. because this is the devout Catholic Joe Biden who's doing this.
Mm.
Joe Biden fired Equal Employment Opportunity Commission General Counsel Sharon Fass Gustafson after she declined to resign under pressure from the White House. So let's get a quote from Gustafson. This is what she said. She said, "At the time I was nominated, I was asked if I would commit to do my best to fulfill my 4-year term, and I answered yes. Unless prevented from doing so, I intend to honor that commitment. I have confidently given this advice to countless embattled clients over the last 25 years. Hold your head up high, do your best work, and do not resign under pressure. In solidarity with them, I will follow that advice. So far as I know, no previous general counsel has been fired for being appointed by the wrong political party." Now, this is for the record. Gustafson was appointed in March 2018 by the former President Donald Trump and was confirmed by the Senate August 2019 to a 4-year term, which Biden cut short. Now, she was let me break this down. She was put in place to protect Americans' religious liberties. Okay? And Joe Biden fires her.
Devout Catholic.
This is where I don't see how people don't connect the dots. You put Javier Becerra as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who is there solely to butcher people who follow their religious conscience or a conscience in general that aspires to follow the natural law. Then you have somebody that's appointed to protect Americans' religious liberties. And within the first 6 months of Joe Biden's term, he fires her.
Mm-hmm.
And he replaces her with his leftist buddies.
Right.
This man is not, this is where, again, you call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. Don't you see what's going on? It's so obvious. He is so against the First Amendment, from speech to religious freedom. And every appointment that he puts forth says that.
Right.
And out of the other side of his mouth, he says otherwise.
Right.
I don't know how people cannot put it together. I really, let me say this. I mean, I don't want to say I see all, because I don't. And to be honest with you, I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not a stupid guy, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm the smartest guy either. But to me, it's so transparent. It's so transparent that this guy, and this is what Congresswoman Virginia Foxx said. She said, this is a pattern.
Right.
President Biden calls for the end of partisan warfare, saying one thing out of one side of his mouth, only to turn around and demand that the Senate-confirmed official resign so he can make room for one of his leftist buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, this is what's happening.
Right.
And we don't, listen, I sometimes, like I said, it's like talking to the wall. It's so disappointing.
Well, talking to them, you expect you're talking to a brick wall. But we're not talking to them. We're talking to the Republicans, the people who come and vote, look for our votes all the time. Hey, buddy, I'm pro-life. Yeah. Hey, buddy, I'm pro-family. Yeah. Hey, buddy, I'm pro-business. Yeah, vote for me. Then you go there and you got no stones. As soon as Jerry Nadler opens his mouth, you cave like a cheap camera. The Georgians wanted to do something in the State House prior to the election being confirmed. The Speaker of the House of the Georgia State Senate went in and, I'll take you out of all your committees. I'll take you off every committee if you pursue this. And then they come to us for votes. Who is to blame? Joe mentioned earlier, we know what the left is all about. I don't blame them. I said a couple of weeks ago, I told the story on here, and most people know it, about the scorpion and the frog. The scorpion stings. We already know that. We don't expect the scorpion not to sting you, okay? Because that's what the scorpion does, because that's in the scorpion's nature. So that's what the left does. We're not here talking to leftists. Only God's going to convert them. I'm talking about the so-called pro-life, God-fearing, gun-toting, traditional family, pro-business Republican that comes to your vote every time and doesn't give a damn about you one bit. That's who we're talking to. And who's to blame that we get played by them? We are. We vote for them. We fall for them every election cycle. Rather than say, you know what, Mr. Chamber of Commerce, conservative Republican in my district, I don't want you. I want that guy. I want that guy to run against you in the Republican primary.
But then you're basically like you're diversive. You know what I'm saying? Like, because if you disagree with them, you're the bad guy. You see, you can't disagree with them, and then the press labels you. That's why, Joe, it's just an ugly machine. I mean, we watched it all play out with Trump. Listen, not you know, like him or not, because of his personality, a lot of his policies were very effective. Like him or not, but because he fought the big fights, people in power are not having it. And that's where we're at. This is, you know, like they say, like England has, like, you know, royalty. Well, we have royalty too. And power is not given away. It's taken. They're not giving it up. They're not giving it up to you or me.
That's why that's why, Joe, you make a very good point, but that's why we actually have to have somehow, some way, call it, I'm not saying a third party, I'm just saying a reform of the Republican Party. We have to have those like Rand Paul. Rand Paul is a perfect example. I don't think he's perfect, but I'd vote for Rand Paul 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. Why? Because he's got stones. Because they've called him every name in the book. He got his ribs broken, okay, by his neighbor, his Bernie Sanders supporting neighbor. He got shot at in the same event that Steve Scalise got actually shot and almost died by a Bernie Sanders supporting gun nut who said to the guy there, who are these guys? Are they Republicans? And the guy said, yeah, he pulled out a gun and started shooting. Okay. I like guys like Rand Paul. Now, there's a guy who said for the sake of the broadcasters, for Rachel Levine, also known as Richard Levine, okay, he said he questioned her. He pressed her. Same with Neera Tanden. He pressed them. He pressed Cardona. He pressed them. Of course, they're going to call him a hater. They're going to call him homophobic. They're going to call him misogynistic, and he doesn't care. But you know, if we had a Republican majority in the House of people who had thought like Rand Paul, I don't need them to be Catholic. We don't need them to be Catholic. If people thought like Rand Paul, okay, when it comes to things A, we won't put up with, and B, our actual rights in both the House and the Senate, this country would turn around. This country, I believe, would turn around. Agree,
but it would take, like I said, I don't think we're there yet. I think we have to suffer, and we're going to. I actually think it's going to collapse. I think America will fold. I think, and it's gonna go. Listen, look what happened to Germany in the 20th century. Their economy went bust. They had 2 wars on their soil. Germany was frigging leveled. They committed an atrocity by killing 5-6 million people due to the fact that they just hated them because of who they are. Then they were occupied by foreign nations for another 40 years.
Including the United States.
That's my point. They had a wall that divided their nation. They had foreign occupation for 40 years, and then they came out of it.
Right.
So that was what? Maybe 80 years? Like, I actually think we're entering a period like that. Maybe we come out of it on the other side. It won't look like the country that it does now, but we're entering that hole. I don't think we're too comfortable. Americans have gotten too comfortable, and they don't want to fight. They should have fought this that just took place in the summer, and they caved.
Right.
I don't expect the fight out of them. I don't expect the fight out of the Republicans. I just don't.
Well, if for no other, let's say you're right. The thing.
I hope I'm wrong.
No.
And I could be, and if I am, I'll say it. I hope I am.
Joe, I'm saying this from a purely entertainment point of view. Okay, if in fact you're right, at the very least, I want Republicans to fight so that the fight is at least interesting. But what's going to bother me? What's going to bother me more than anything is, remember, okay, like I said, we're mostly Catholic here. We know the victory is ours. We don't have to get into that because we know the victory is ours. Okay, I'm not concerned so much with that. I worry about my own soul and my wife and our salvation. Okay, but we're just talking about in purely temporal terms. Okay, about what's going on. At the very least, don't roll over, man. Don't roll like just don't make it be like, if you fight and lose, that's one thing. But if you just let them steamroll you with their lies and their deceit, their evil, and you just cave in, that's really what's going to bother the crap out of me. Because it's like, at least make it interesting. I'll join you. I'll get in the fight. Okay. But don't roll over. Please don't do that. Because then it's like, then it's like they just have their way. Now, again, it's like you always say, they'll have their hour, God will have his day. But why do we have to go through that? And I don't want to get
I hope
over.
I'm wrong.
I hope you are.
I hope I am, honest to goodness.
Unfortunately, you might not be wrong. But let's go. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's go to one more story that we want to talk about. It's actually a follow-up, okay? Because Joe and I, as we said last week, we're going to err on the side of believing Milo Yiannopoulos that he really is converting his life. I want to extend that to anybody because I'd like for people to believe that I actually converted my life from what I was, let's say, for argument's sake, 12 years ago and beyond, to the man that I want to become and I have become. I'm a married man now. As we all have our sins. We all have the things that we've done in our lives we're not proud of, all right? And periods of time where we were involved in a particular sin or another. And so we're Joe and I, we're Catholic men. We're going to extend the benefit of the doubt to Milo Yiannopoulos and that he's really trying to put down his sodomy, okay, and change his life and amend his life. But now he's getting put through the grinder.
It's a given.
Okay, of course. Now they attacked him when he was actually a self-identified homosexual, okay, living that lifestyle. So you know they're going to attack him even more viciously now. But here's one thing about him before we get into the story. But he fights. You cannot deny that about Milo Yiannopoulos. He fights. He doesn't take their crap, okay? And he fights hard, too, okay? And you know what I like about him? He does it by laughing at them, which they really, really don't like. So we're going to get into that. We're giving Milo the benefit of the doubt. But now he's, I think, doing something that's very important. And Joe thinks he's doing something very important. And we want to talk about that because this is going to, if he wasn't hated enough already, this is going to get him hated even more.
As Joe said, we're following up with our story last week. Ex-gay, I hate that phrase, but that's what they're basically calling him. Conservative activist Milo. He's basically opening a reparative therapy center in Florida. Basically, what he said was it was very easy for him to raise this money to open up this center. I'm actually surprised he's able to open it up. Maybe because Florida's Florida.
I imagine that he's doing it in Florida because Florida probably has not banned it like California or New York.
But basically what that is, it's basically a center for people. So it would be like psychiatrists or psychologists that would sit down with people and to get maybe at the heart of why someone is living a homosexual lifestyle. So he's basically saying by doing that, no, you're not born that way. And he said it was very easy to basically raise this money. He said something also I thought that was interesting. He thinks that there's a resurgence in religion and social conservative thought. Interesting. I don't see it, but I'll buy that. Maybe he's gauging it based upon the fact that he's getting money to
could be. I do think, just very quickly, I do think that the pro-life position is gaining more traction, mainly because, and by the way, this goes back to fighting. The pro-life position, the people that fight in the pro-life movement have never given up. They have constantly been moving forward. Oh, well, they have God on their side.
But they're also rooted in God.
And
see, that's where principles come from. Right. That comes down to what I'm saying. When you're not rooted in anything, when you're rooted in mammon, you give up. Because it doesn't, like, that's...
Well, without grace, the pro-life movement would have dissipated a long time ago.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, why we give up. And here's the thing. Our country isn't that way. It's just not. And that's where I don't have hope in it. And a lot of people in the chat room, they're saying the rosary is the weapon you have to pray. I'm on board with that. Politics is an never-ending struggle. And I'm going to be truthful with you. You have little wins here, little wins there. When you have a populace that is utterly and absolutely rooted in pagan ideas and materialism and consumerism and all
pornography,
you're not going to establish anything.
Right.
Anything.
Well,
nothing.
No, I agree. And just get back to it because I want you to get back to Milo. So I think the pro-life movement, because they have God and they are rooted in the truth, okay, have constantly moved forward. So I think in that regard, the pro-life movement, I don't know if we'll be around for it. We may be dead and God willing in heaven by then. We will probably be around for it. This country will change on that. But the country seems to be going the opposite direction. I met a number of people in my travels who have flat out said, I am pro-life, but I have no problem with gays adopting kids, and I have no problem with gay marriage. And I don't think they just look, I just think they don't look deeply into the issue enough. In other words, to just know how destructive a lifestyle it is. But my point is, I think that on the pro-life side, things are moving in the right direction. I think on this, it's moving in the opposite direction. But Milo's actually, go ahead.
Well, Milo, keep this in mind. This is a man who lived the gay lifestyle for a number of years, and this is his words. These are not my words. This is what he said. Milo called the gay lobby wicked, evil, and poisonous. For those people to suggest that reparative therapy is somehow damaging to people's self-esteem is so laughably preposterous. These are his words, not mine. This is a man who lived a gay lifestyle. He said, I don't take it serious. He further criticized the gay lobby's insistence that people are born gay, saying it's not science, it's public relations, and it's a lie.
Stop there 1 second. You want to talk about stones, okay? Now, Joe and I have said a million times on the show, we are not the most courageous of God's men. We are trying to be, okay? And we do show courage, okay? That is one lie that we need to be rhinos about. What I mean by rhinos is not Republicans in name only. I mean the animal, the rhino, who's got very thick skin, who runs through the forest, getting hit with branches and rocks and everything else, and just keeps moving forward, because that's what a rhino does, okay? On that issue, Joe just brought out what Milo said about not being born that way. We cannot cave. We have the truth on our side. We have the natural law on our side, and we have science on our side. There is no science to support the preposterous claim, as Milo calls it, that you are born gay. Scientists who have an agenda have been looking for it for years, and the research shows that it's just not there. The research actually shows the opposite, that there are environmental factors that create or cause a same-sex attraction in an individual, both male and female. Now, those things might be terrible. I'm not diminishing those. Could be abuse, could be a lot of things. Okay, that lead to that. And our a hand of love and charity, and what I mean by real charity with love, extended to those people is something that it's important for us to do, okay? Because sometimes it's very difficult circumstances. But Milo makes a good point. Stop letting them say that you're born that way. It is propaganda. It's a lie.
But the problem is the media.
Oh, it's always,
and it's Hollywood. You see, like, I laughed like during this whole COVID thing. One of the memes that stuck with me that I still like think about, it was two Amish guys. It says, why isn't COVID affecting the Amish community? One picture, and then under it, same two guys, because they don't have TV. And basically, it's the media.
Yes.
You see, they're pumping. That's why a lot of this stuff, there is a large swath of Americans that believe that if you don't think like them, you're not a patriot.
Mm-hmm.
And they're simply brainwashed by who? The media.
Mm-hmm.
And the elites, who, by the way, don't care about them. They could care less about them. They live in bubbles. They're wealthy. Their children have the best of everything. They have trust funds for their great-grandchildren. They could care less about you.
Yes.
Yet, they impose their belief on you. They shove it down your throat, and you swallow it up like a good meal. And frankly, half of America's brainwashed. And I'll be truthful with you. To get out of it, I'll be honest with you, Joe, I don't know. I don't know if there's a man or a woman outside of the Blessed Mother or Jesus himself that could fix it. Because I honestly, I wish I thought differently.
My problem is this: is that with something is so manifestly true, okay?
But sexes. What could be more true than that?
That's what I'm saying. It's like when something is so obviously true. Now Christ could do whatever he wants. If he wants to beat us over the head and say, "Hey, wake up," that's his business. But does God really have to tell us that? Well, first of all, God already did tell us that. Somebody posted in the chat room, God made them man and female. We know that, okay? And biology backs that up, okay? It doesn't contradict it. So my point is, do we really need to have to convince people that gays aren't born that way, or that boys cannot be girls and girls cannot be boys? And moreover, even if you think that, you can't impose that in the public schools. Do we really need to worry about being called haters? My attitude is like the girl said to Rocky in Rocky 1, screw you, creepo. Because I'm not listening to you. You're not going to do this to our kids.
But the thing is, why people go along with it, it's financial. They're afraid because their livelihood.
Well, that's got to stop.
But this is but the people who are in charge,
Mhm.
see, it's a vicious, see, it's not so easy, because the people who are in charge, they say the way it goes.
Right.
And the press are saying and feeding you the line, and you're eating it up.
Mhm.
So people are afraid to be labeled, because that means their comfortable life gets taken away. It's like a movie. There's a good movie with Russell Crowe, and it goes along this line about the nicotine business. It was
The informant or
yes,
the insider. The insider.
And basically he's
Pacino's in that too.
he's a scientist that figures out that cigarettes, that they basically are upping the nicotine levels synthetically to basically make you addicted.
Mhm.
And he was an ethical scientist. And he basically said, listen, I found this, and this is what's going on. We have to stop it. And they knew it, and they wouldn't. And basically he blew the whistle on them, and they destroyed his life.
Mhm.
And they show in his life, he had this great house, he had this great car, he had all these nice things, and he lost everything. I think his wife leaves him. He winds up teaching high school chemistry. His whole life changed. You see, people aren't willing to do that. And that's why we're where we're at. You see, we're not willing to suffer for the truth.
Mhm.
And until we are, no one's fixing this, guys.
And nothing's going to change.
Sorry.
Like
And
you
this
said-
is what it is. And he was willing to do that. And he did. He gave it all up. He said, take the job, take the house, take the car. I'll do this instead. But we are not willing to do that. The Republicans sure as hell aren't. The Supreme Court sure as hell isn't. And frankly, neither are Americans, because they don't open their mouth. And that is the problem. And take a stand.
That may be I would agree with you on everything except the opening your mouth. I think there's a lot of people out there opening their mouth, particularly on social media. That's why, and I think I backed that up by saying that's why people are looking forward to the tremendous success of Parler and Gab and MeWe and Rumble, because they say, no. I agree with you, Joe. And at heart, I agree with mostly everything you said. But I do think that people are willing to open up their mouth.
Well, I hope.
And remember something. What is the first thing you need to do? Look, you can't solve a problem. You can't come up with a plan to solve a problem unless you identify what the problem is. Okay. In identifying the problem, that requires freedom of speech, which is the whole purpose of this video tonight. Freedom of speech and the protection of freedom of speech. And I think people are starting to find solutions to, as E. Michael Jones says, establish secure lines of communication. And I think eventually that's going to coalesce into a real movement in this country. Okay. That's going to get us back to some founding principles. And yes, what we're supposed to be, which is rooted in God and the moral law. Okay. I do believe that. So I would agree with you in general on that, though. I do think people are getting frustrated. And I think people are looking to alternative media and alternative social media. Let's see what Trump does in the next 3 months. He's got the buku bucks to do it and the connections. He could create a social media company. The dude could raise $1 billion like that if he wanted to. Let's see what he's got in store. I think we should send him our resume. We should get whatever he's going to do. Hopefully Joe and Joe are going to be on there. Any final thoughts, Joe?
No, I mean, it's a good conversation. And frankly, I think America, God willing, we just keep doing our best. We keep praying. I think that's the answer. That's my answer.
Yes.
To be truthful with you. I think America has to refocus. If we refocus, I think we'll come out of it. But if we don't, we won't. And I'll be truthful with you. There's no man-made idea. And frankly, principles. I mean, I'll just end it with this. Today, I'm Catholic. I go to Mass. St. Thomas, Lazarus gets raised from the dead. St. Thomas goes, let's go to Jerusalem and die with him. St. Thomas was the first one to cave. The point of I said that to my wife. If you're not rooted in God, you're gone. And that's why America's where it's at.
Well, let's replant ourselves then.
And that's what has to happen. I'm going to be honest with you.
If we want to take our country back, you want to make America great again, let's get rooted in God.
And then we'll be great again.
And then
it's that simple. It really is that simple. Unless we do that, because man on his own strength, on his own principles, on his own smarts, on his own discipline, never cuts the mustard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So there was a lot of people in the chat room. We're sorry that we didn't get to you all. In fact, I don't think we mentioned many. I do want to mention though, Mark's in the chat room, Lisogorski. He will become a temporarily professed Carmelite in June, and it could not come at a better time. Mark, you're in our prayers, brother.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. So we want to thank you, all of our favorites here, and some people we've never seen before. Walt Mills, that End Times Warrior, Colin, Tom Gugliotta is here, Michelle McDermott, just a whole bunch of you all. Female KC Royals fan, kind of love that. Female KC Royals fan. Lisa Leopold, Suzanne. So again, we thank you all so very much for being here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Please, 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 please share this video. When we're done, just hit share. Share it on YouTube. Share it on Facebook. Share it all over the place. Our message is starting to get out there. We're growing in social media. Again, one more time, we're on the Crusade channel, on the radio, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Take advantage of their free 30-day trial subscription. You'll love the channel. We're on Veritas Catholic Network. That's AM radio. We hit the big time. AM radio in Connecticut, Northern Long Island, and Westchester, soon to be in New York City. So we have an interview show on there. We interviewed Bill Donahue last week and Jesse Romero this week. So you can listen to those. They have a podcast link, or you could download it on your mobile device. And outside of that, we love you all. And remember, until next week, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening.